Hey guys, this is Alex from Games and Me again. Just want to give you guys a quick impression of Resistance 2 for the PlayStation 3. Now, I've only been able to play a single player session, but I have to tell you, it's one of the best games I've ever played for this year particularly. Definitely one of the best shooters in the year, and it's shaping up to be one of the system sellers for this year as well for the PlayStation 3. Anyways, when I was actually trying to figure out like what I should say during this review, I thought I was gonna have a very difficult time trying to figure out. Okay, I have like a ton of games that I'm playing right now. I'm playing through Fallout 3. I'm playing through Fable 2, and I was afraid that I was actually going to be slamming it and be too hard on it. But when I started writing it down, I was like, I actually had a lot of good things to say about it. And it's mainly because of the way that certain elements of the game were put together and given to you in a very kind of precise kind of way. It's very kind of perfected, kind of like fine wine and stuff. So let me get through these real quick. um, First thing that the game does is it tries to distance itself from the way that the story was told in the first game. The first game was told in a very narrative type manner. It was telling you the story of what happened in Europe and how the Chimera took over Europe. They kind of like, it sort of detached you from the main character in a way. You were playing the character, but you weren't necessarily, like being, like experiencing a majority of the storyline elements. Also, all the areas in the game in the first game were very, very tiny. They're basically just this small box, and then that was it. There were some later levels that were a little bit longer, but they were essentially these small chunks of levels, like that had like about 7 or 8 minutes worth of gameplay. Then you load the next level and stuff. But thankfully, all that's gone. The narrator is gone. It's Nathan Hale's story. It's no longer documentary style. It's a very macho aesthetic. You'll notice that Nathan Hale has a much more gravelly, like deeper voice because of all the things that have happened to him. Um, and now he works with a team called the Sentinels. Now, in terms of gameplay, the weapons have really good weight. Like, they feel very tangible. They kind of like pop out of the screen thanks to sound effects and the way that they've animated sort of the elements of it. Like, you kind of almost feel like when he's firing the weapons and stuff, you almost feel the recoil like at you and stuff like that, which is really, really good. This is compared to the first game where it's kind of like really almost kind of you can tell like when the developers first time doing like a shooter, it's kind of like they're not sure how to give weight to these weapons, but now it's just completely amazing. Like, I actually, compared to the first game where I had like certain types of weapons that I actually liked, I actually preferred the more human weapons. In this particular game, I actually started liking some of the Chimera weapons because they made a lot of good changes to them. And the gameplay didn't feel cheap. You know how those games where they'll drop like a whole bunch of guys on you and you feel like you're completely helpless and stuff, and you keep replaying them trying to make sure like you didn't mess up or anything? Well, this game doesn't make you feel that way, and that's the great thing about it. The controls also feel right for the PlayStation 3. In the first game, it's kind of a little floaty. The life bar, there's also a life bar on the bottom that keeps track of your health. You have to pick up med packs and stuff like that. You still have that to a degree, but it applies the Call of Duty 4 Halo 2 style system where you have to take cover to get your health back and replenish it. I think that kind of increases the actual tension in the game a lot more than normal, which is actually a great thing. The AI is a lot more aggressive. The Chimera do bum rush you from time to time, but I don't think this is unfair at all, because in particular cases, when you're in a firefight with these two people, it's as if the AI is kind of like trying to literally push forward, which is kind of like a very natural thing for the Chimera. They're kind of like they're kind of being controlled by this hive mind type thing, and they really don't care about like what happens to their troops, just that the job gets done. And it kind of comes across with the way that they act and the way that they're animated, which is also another great thing. There's also a great variety of enemy types as well, and some pay homage to actually some of my favorite movies like The Predator. This is more apparent in the Oric, California level. I'm not sure if it's really California, it says Oric. but they basically just kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, I haven't really fought a lot of them in that level, but I can tell you that it's pretty suspenseful, and I thought they're really cool. And of course, some of the enemy types from the previous game actually came back as well, and that was a welcome addition. Um, in addition to that, the boss battles in this game are fantastic. There's this thing called the Kraken, which is essentially this huge squid type thing, which has like kind of razor blade kind of like gears, like, you know, at the end of its tentacles that you have to fight at the end of the one of the levels. And I have to say, like, that was like a very intense type of boss battle. And it's not because like, oh, you have to take cover and stuff like that. It was very creative the way that they set it up, because you thought like you were gonna fight him earlier in the level, and then suddenly you get, you know, and then you never see him again. You thought you killed him, and then suddenly he comes back and, you know, wants revenge and stuff like that. Really cool. Ammo is also plentiful. So I had some problems in the first game where I was running out of ammo, which is kind of bad in a shooter. Most of the time, you know, the main purpose of a shooter to shoot things. If you don't have ammo to shoot things, you don't want to use your pistol or, you know, your melee weapon to get, you know, to get ammo and stuff. This game has a ton, because, you know, majority of the set pieces and stuff like that have like these areas where there's a bunch of dead bodies, both Chimera and humans, and you can pick up any sorts of weapons and stuff, and you can even change them and interchange them based on what you feel like using. There's even a couple of new weapons, like this kind of like weapon that feels like the battle rifle from Halo 2, and I think that was a kind of like a nice nod to, you know, so that they can kind of bring in more players, you know, from other systems and stuff, and make them feel comfortable with a completely different game. And the last part of it is that there's this huge sense of scale with the game, and I think that that's one of its selling points. Once you see your very first Goliath, that is this huge kind of spider mechanical type thing walking through the countryside, and then you see like all the fleets of the Chimera like in their ships and stuff, like all right above San Francisco, and you're controlling what Nathan Hale is seeing and just looking up and basking at like how crazy it is that this is happening to the United States. You'll really get sucked into it. And that leaves me to my only negative point about the game, which it takes a little bit of time to actually get into that part of the game where you really want to have like intense firefights, a lot of things to shoot, and, you know, like several set pieces that are just amazing. I would suggest maybe playing like half an hour past the point where they're kind of starting off from the end of Resistance 1 up until the part where you become a Sentinel. And because right at that point, that's when the game gets really, really insane. Because it's kind of like, you know, those parts in the games where they're trying to handhold, you know, people who've never played shooters before to try to kind of suck them into the actual storyline. And once that happens, then they're kind of like, okay, well, you know, all bets are off. We're going to unleash everything at you now. And that's one of the things that, you know, I can see some people get detracted from it. But don't fret. In about half an hour like of gameplay, you can get to like some of the most amazing fight sequences in shooter history. So, enough hyping about the game. Well, we're going to have a review, hopefully within the next few weeks or so. We have a review every Sunday at live.gamesend.me. At every 1:30 p.m. every Sunday. This is Pacific time. So go watch it, and we'll see you this weekend.